Welcome to Talk to Martin. The month is September 2018 and our topic today is instrument flying. You've maybe seen some of my videos on YouTube. Today we're going to do something a little more interactive where I'll provide a few thoughts and pointers on the topic of instrument flying, and I will also take your questions through the YouTube chat window, or better yet via phone or Skype. And to encourage live participation, everyone who participates via phone or Skype will again be entered into a drawing for a $25 gift card from Sporty's Pilot Shop. So please sign up right away for the show. You can still do that online at www.martin.aero, or keep it in mind for next month's episode. Just a couple of ground rules before we get started. When you contact me, please give me your real first name so I know how to address you. And the only other rule is no politics and no religious discussions, please. Beyond that, anything goes. As I've said, the topic today is instrument flying, but if you have a burning question on something different that you just need to get off your chest, by all means, do so. Let's start with some feedback from the previous episode, and let me switch to that. Steve said, good video, nice learning more about you. One question, is there a reason that you like to go into the bigger airports like Kennedy and Boston rather than the smaller ones around them? I know they're great experience, but cost can be a big factor. Absolutely, cost is a big factor. It's not cheap, it is a fun experience. I thought about this question a little bit, and I don't know why I find it so exciting, but I do. And it's just something that I've always enjoyed and will try to do more of. And my goal is one day to have all Class B airports in the contiguous 48 states in my logbook. But it is expensive and it is not always the most convenient. Rob said, enjoyed your discussion with Ian the most. I hope you're able to get more Skype volunteers in the future. You may recall, if you've seen last month's episode, or it was actually 2 months ago, Ian was the lone brave soul that dialed in via Skype. We had a brief video chat, and that was quite nice. Rob liked it. I liked it too, and I hope we will get more of that. And we can only do that, of course, if you sign up for it and let me know what you'd like to talk about and how to contact you. All right, let's try to connect with our first participant, Damian from Australia, where it should be early Monday morning. Hello, is this Damian?
How are you?
Good, how are you?
Good, thank you.
Well, thank you for joining the show. Tell us a little bit about where you're calling from, please, and what you're flying.
Now, I've got the double feed here. I'll just close YouTube off for a minute. Oop, there we go. Big delay between. Can you hear me now?
I can hear you just fine, yes.
There we go. Yeah, I've been flying since 1978. Big hiatuses in between my flying, but just got what we call an Australian AFR. I think you guys call it a check ride in America. Got that all completed, my night rating back, and been doing a few hours. And just started my instrument rating theory. So any tips you can give on the initial instrument rating, apart from having a memory like an elephant and just being a genius, I guess, to remember it all. It's quite intimidating when you go through the book.
Yeah. To make sure I understood, did you say you are preparing for the exam, or you already passed the check, right? Or?
No, I've got the big thick. I've got my VFR night and day license current again.
Oh, okay.
So now I've got the big thick book of theory to go through.
Yeah. Well, I don't know if I have any sound advice on that, other than stay on it and be diligent. It is a lot to memorize and to learn, no question about it. It seems to help when, as much as possible, students apply in their flying what they study. So if you learn about approaches, you should fly some approaches with your instructor at the same time, or it doesn't always work, but mixing theory and practice seems to work pretty well, as opposed to doing only the theory, getting that behind you and then starting with the practical flying, just because you know how to apply what you're learning.
Yeah, unfortunately that's a little bit hard up here, because where I am, if you ever have a look on the map, we're basically right on the western side of Australia, and it's hard enough to hire an aeroplane. We're paying, if you're not careful, you can pay 400 Australian dollars an hour for an old 181 Warrior. So ultimately we'll wind up on the east coast again, where there's a lot more training organisations. So there's no training organisations here. So I had to drive 600 kilometres to do my renewal, my licence renewal. So we're a long way from anywhere. Hence, everyone goes to work in a yellow shirt sort of thing, but or fluorescent work shirt. But I thought, well, I'll just start plugging away on the theory to start with, and then when the time and the facilities become available, then get started on some flying with it.
When do you think you might have that all wrapped up?
No. Hopefully within 12 months.
I think that's a good goal, a reasonable goal.
Yeah.
If you have access to an airplane and an instructor at the right time.
Yeah, and like I say, up where we are, we're in what's called remote Australia, and there's not a real lot here. Our nearest town's 600 kilometres, so we're a long way from anywhere.
Yes. Yeah, I think of Iowa as rural, but I have not been to Australia, and I bet where you live, it's a lot more remote than
Western
I've seen.
West Australia, we're 2,500 kilometres from Darwin and 2,500 kilometres from Perth, and nothing towards the east until really you hit the Northern Territory. Then there's not much. So we're certainly in the remote area, there's no doubt about it, and we're in what's called a designated remote area. So as soon as your wheels come off the ground, you're in designated remote area in our part of Australia too. So but no, love watching the videos, and I learn a lot just from what you do.
All right, and is the weather where you live such that you often will need an instrument rating, or is it something you're just adding more for fun than for real need?
When you get over east, you need it, but here we have 340 odd days of sunshine, so you get the huge big thunderstorms. We're coming into what we call our wet season now, so it'll still be I don't know, 32 to 37 degrees Celsius during the day, but 80-90% humidity, and then you get the huge big afternoon thunderstorms come through, which are a challenge for everybody, no matter what they're flying. Even the RPT that comes in here, the commercial jets, we had one hit by lightning last year with quite a bit of damage. So this time of the year isn't a lot of fun flying in the afternoons.
I bet, yeah. And the instrument rating doesn't help there. Thunderstorms are not to be messed with.
No go.
And
absolutely.
In fact, even those that have an instrument rating then often stay below the clouds, so they can see the rain showers and they can see the clouds developing, rather than being surprised if you stay in the clouds and you don't have visibility to what's going on around you.
Yeah, absolutely. We get monsters up here. They'll top out at 50, 60,000 feet, so they're big. So, but no, thank you for the opportunity to talk to you and ask some questions.
All right. Well, thank you for calling in or letting me call you so early on your Monday morning. Nice talking to you, and I wish you all the best for getting your instrument training and rating completed.
Thank you.
Okay. Take care. Bye-bye. All right. Thank you, Damian. All All right, moving on. Apart from your calls and questions, I will also try to share a few things I've learned over the years with you here, share my experience. And for starters, I'll talk a little bit about when to cancel IFR. I should note, by the way, that everything I say here is based on my experience of flying in the United States. And while instrument flying is pretty similar in most countries, there are some subtle but important differences, so please keep that in mind if you're flying in Australia like Damian or anywhere else in the world. So what does that mean, cancel IFR? Well, if you are on an instrument flight plan, that flight plan needs to be closed at some point in time, or else search and rescue will come looking for you if you're overdue. If you are landing at an airport with a control tower, the tower will close your flight plan, and that's easy. There's nothing else you have to do. If, on the other hand, you're landing at an airport without a control tower, in other words, an uncontrolled airport, then you have to close your flight plan yourself. And there are a few different ways you can do that. And it's not always understood, especially by beginners that just got their instrument rating, what all the different ways are with the pros and cons. So you can cancel or close your flight plan on the ground after landing, either by calling flight service by phone, or in some cases you may be able to contact an ATC facility by radio from the ground. Calling ATC by radio is probably the fastest and easiest options, but it doesn't always work. And your approach chart gives you some hints as to what you can try. And I'll bring up an example here for Iowa City, Iowa, and you can see two frequencies on that chart highlighted. The fact that there's a clearance delivery frequency shown on this chart is a sure indication that you can reach ATC on the ground from Iowa City here. Because after all, on the ground is where you typically request the clearance before departure. So you can dial in 119.05 and say Cedar Rapids approach, Bonanza 70 Tango Bravo, on the ground in Iowa City, request closing my flight plan. And you should get a confirmation back from them that your flight plan is closed, or they might say something like IFR cancellation received. Either way, you are good to go. You can also try the approach control or center frequency listed on that approach chart. Sometimes you can reach ATC that way, or you may be able to relay your cancellation through another airborne aircraft. If none of that works, you can call flight service by phone and close your flight plan that way. That takes a little longer, but it works anywhere as long as you have a cell connection or a landline available on the ground. There are a few different numbers you can call. The only one I can always remember is the old flight service phone number, 1-800-WX-BRIEF. You'll have to answer a few quick questions for the automated phone menu. Then you'll speak with a briefer who will take your cancellation. It's important that you cancel quickly after you land. And why is that? Well, I mentioned search and rescue. They will come look for you if they cannot confirm that you're on the ground. And it's an expensive operation, so don't let that happen. They may charge you for the effort if it's all the result of you forgetting to close your flight plan. Here's another reason. When ATC clears you for an approach to the airport, that airspace is yours. And until ATC knows that you're out of the way, they cannot clear anybody else to land or take off at that airport. So you can help those departing or arriving behind you by closing your flight plan as soon as possible. Everyone will be waiting for you to do this. And taking the as soon as possible a step further, if the weather conditions are good and if you are in VFR weather while still able to reach center or approach, you can say, November 70 Tango Bravo, Iowa City is in sight, I'm canceling IFR. They will respond with something along the lines of November 70 Tango Bravo, IFR cancellation received, squawk VFR, change to advisory frequency approved. And then you don't have to worry about closing a flight plan on the ground because it is already closed. Doing this in the air is the best way to help other pilots who may want to depart or land around the same time because it allows ATC to clear another instrument flight into that airspace. The one thing to be really careful about is that you must be in VFR weather conditions when you cancel IFR. Depending on what airspace you're in, that could require different amounts of visibility and different distances from clouds. So don't cancel the very moment you break out of the clouds unless you're sure you meet the VFR requirements for the specific airspace you're in. be especially careful at airports that have Class Echo airspace all the way to the ground because of the higher requirements for visibility and distance from the clouds. To show you an example of that, it's a sectional chart with the Burlington, Iowa airport, and you can see a magenta dashed line around the airport, which means the Class Echo airspace goes all the way to the ground here. Pilots have gotten into trouble in places like this if they cancel too early before they really were in VFR conditions. Okay, let's try to bring another caller into the show. I will try to reach Scott now. Scott had also registered ahead of time on my website, which is what I ask all of you to do if you'd like to be part of the show.
Hello?
Hello, is this Scott?
Yes, sir. Who's this?
Hi, Scott. This is Martin Pauly.
Hi, Martin. How are you doing today?
I'm great. How are you?
Good.
You are on the show. We're broadcasting live on YouTube, and I thank you for signing up and giving me your phone number to call you. So if this is still a good time, we can chat a little bit.
Sure, I appreciate the call. So I'm just curious about instrument flying. I'm almost done with my private pilot's license, and I'm going to be starting my instrument here in a little while. And I was wondering, with you as an instrument pilot, had any tips or tricks for a private pilot who's going to be beginning instrument training, or things that you wish you knew ahead of time when you started your training?
Okay. Yeah, so how many hours do you have, and what have you been flying so far, Scott?
I've been flying a Cherokee 180 and a V-tail Bonanza with my dad, and I have about 40 to 50 hours at this point, and I have a bit of instrument, simulated instruments, but a little curious to see what I would what to expect when you start your instrument rating.
Okay, all right. So yeah, you are fairly new. Then you probably don't have your private pilot's license for all that long yet. Have you been doing a lot of cross-country flying so far?
I have. I've been doing some nighttime simulated instrument cross-country flying recently, and it's actually quite different than I expected. I was just wondering what to expect when I start my instrument rating. Like, what would be useful to know going into your instrument, or things to look forward to studying?
Yeah, so things that are good to study. Obviously, you need to study a lot for the written exam, right? There's no way around that. And we just spoke with Damian from Australia a little bit about that. It's a lot to learn. A lot of it is just memorization. Other things you will understand as you apply them during your training. Just like for your private pilot's license, a lot thinking about how happy you'll be with your training and the outcome. A lot depends on the instructor that you choose. Make sure the chemistry is right, and somebody that has the right level of experience and teaching skills, and that's easier said than done, right? I consider myself pretty lucky in that I've, for the most part, worked with instructors that were really good. Looking back, I can see that I learned a lot from them. As you start, as you transition from your post-private pilot training to your instrument training, the first thing that the instructor will do with you is some basic attitude flying, right? You'll have the hood or the foggles on, and it can be a handful to just try keep the plane straight and level, fly turns, climbs and descents. Things that are very simple when you can see the outside. Things that get pretty hard when you can't. And you'll spend a few hours doing that before you even get into any kind of procedures like approaches. And what I what I would suggest you look for is training conditions that include actual instrument conditions, so fly in the clouds and not just with the hood or foggles. And can you tell us where you live and what kind of weather conditions you find there most of the year?
Well, I live in Louisville, Kentucky, and the weather is actually rather unpredictable. Some days it's good, clear VFR days, and you have days like today's where it's 402 miles of visibility, and it's really hard to predict whether or not it's going to be a good VFR day or not.
Right. Okay, but that's a part of the country where you do at least occasionally get instrument weather that is safe to fly. And unlike Florida, where it's either severe clear or severe storms, and not much in between. I would encourage you to approach your instructor or ask candidates for your instructor job to see if they're willing to be flexible with you on the schedule and maybe schedule something on short notice when conditions are right, because it is a huge difference between flying with the hood or foggles on the one hand and flying in real clouds on the other hand, and that's something that instrument students that don't do much flying or don't do any flying sometimes in the clouds, in real clouds during their training, struggle with later. That would be one piece of advice I have for you. From the beginning, try to seek those conditions as much as possible. And it may require some flexibility at work for both you and your instructor and whoever schedules the airplane. So it's not always easy, but very well worthwhile.
Now, my dad is an instrument-rated pilot. Would you recommend maybe going out on an actual instrument day? Like, say today is about 502 or 3 miles. Would you recommend going out on a day in actual instrument conditions and flying to sort of get used to how it actually is in instrument conditions rather than just being under the hood?
Yeah, I think that would be a good idea. You mean from the right seat with your dad in the left seat and you just take the controls and give it a try?
Maybe not take the controls, but just get a feel for how you're flying in instrument conditions and getting a feel for how it actually is with no visual references to the ground.
Absolutely. I think that is something that will be helpful. I would go a step further even, and if you feel comfortable with it and if your dad feels comfortable, once you're established in level flight in the clouds, straight in level flight, take the controls, give it a try, see how well that works, and get a sense for how after a few minutes you know nothing about the attitude of the airplane, except for what the instruments in front of you show you. It's one thing to read about that or hear about that. It's quite another thing to actually experience how helpless you get without those instruments. And I think it'll teach you very quickly how important good understanding of the instruments and a good scan is, and that will help you then down the road. So that's something you can try, even before you fly with an instructor. And if you have a dad with an airplane and an instrument rating, by all means, I would do that.
Well, cool. I will keep that in mind. I appreciate it very much.
Yeah, you're welcome. What's your timeline? How quickly do you think you want to have the whole thing completed?
Well, I'm not sure. I'm trying to get through all my ratings as quickly as possible so I can get my instructor rating and then build time to become an airline pilot. So hopefully within the next 5 to 10 years I'm in the airline.
Okay.
But we'll see how that goes.
Yeah. Well, I wish you good luck for that, Scott. Thank you for participating today, and all the best for getting your instrument rating.
Thank you very much, Mr. Pauly, for having me on the show. I appreciate it.
You're welcome. Bye-bye.
Bye.
All right. Thank you, Scott. Okay, moving on. A different topic. A topic which often seems to cause confusion. Say you have a GPS, and say this GPS is approved for IFR flight. You can then legally use that GPS, at least here in the US, to replace other traditional navigation sources like VOR and DME. In fact, you don't even need to have VOR or DME equipment in your airplane. You can simply rely on what your IFR-approved GPS is telling you instead. But there's one important exception to this rule. Pilots may not use GPS to replace the nav aid specified on the approach plate, for example, a VOR or an NDB, to provide lateral guidance for the final approach segment of that approach. That is spelled out in the AIM. Here it is. So this is AIM's AIM section 123, use of suitable RNAV. When you see RNAV, think GPS. RNAV systems on conventional procedures and routes. And you can read what it says here, but what does it mean? It means that if you're flying a VOR or an NDB approach, you are not allowed to use your IFR-approved GPS to provide guidance for flying the final approach segment. In other words, from the final approach fix inbound, you will need to have a VOR or an NDB in addition to the GPS, whatever is needed and called out on that particular approach. If you don't have a VOR receiver, you're not allowed to fly VOR approaches. Likewise, if you don't have an NDB receiver, you're not allowed to fly an NDB approach. Now, having said that, there is some help available from the next paragraph of the in the AIM. Let me switch to that here. Section 5. I'll give you a second to read this. And what this means is that you can legally follow the guidance from your IFR-approved GPS to fly a VOR or NDB approach as long as you also have that VOR or NDB tuned on a separate receiver. And you need to monitor that VOR or monitor that NDB to ensure you're staying on the approach course. Now let's look at an example of an approach where we can use that. Here's an NDB approach in Kent, Ohio. To fly this approach, you need to have an NDB receiver. Even with your IFR approved GPS, you still need to have an NDB receiver because it says NDB in the title, right? And that receiver needs to be tuned to the Akron NDB. But you may rely on GPS guidance to navigate on the final approach course instead of doing the mental gymnastics with the ADF needle. If you're far enough in your instrument training to have flown NDB approaches, you know what I'm talking about. You can fly the airplane using GPS as long as you also monitor the ADF needle to verify the GPS is telling you the right thing. You can even use GPS with your flight director or autopilot, again, as long as you monitor the traditional nav aid. And that, to many, seems a lot easier than using just a raw instrument, the raw data from the NDB and ADF. A few additional notes here. One, this is very specific to US regulations, so please be careful before you do any of this in other countries. Two, the approved flight manual supplement, or the AFM supplement, which came with your IFR approved GPS, may deviate from the AIM guidance and say something different. And three, this does not apply to localizer or ILS approaches, and obviously this is also not applicable to GPS or RNAV approaches, where GPS is the natural navigation source to fly the approach. All right, we will make another call from here, and we're going to call Noah next. So please bear with me as I try to get Noah on the call. Hello, is this Noah?
Yes, this is Noah.
Hi, Noah. It's Martin Pauly. How are you?
Good. How are you?
Good, thank you. You are live on the show. We are broadcasting on YouTube. Thank you for sending me your note and for contacting me.
You're welcome.
So, would you like to tell us maybe where you're at, where you live, and what you fly?
Yes, I'm fly out of Birmingham. I'm a student pilot. Have about 45 to 50 hours, and I fly a 172 primarily, as well as the 152.
Okay. So you're student pilot right now for your private or for your instrument?
For private right now.
Okay, all right. And
but I should be getting done with that soon.
Awesome. Are you thinking of moving on then and also get your instrument rating on top of that?
Oh, definitely.
Good. Good. Yeah, it's a very valuable rating to have that can help a lot, and will sure make you an even better pilot. All right, and I think you had a very specific question for me, if I remember right, but I don't have it in front of me. Would you please tell us what you're interested in?
Yes. So I used to work at the airport, and I would always ask pilots, especially if they were instrument flying, if they were instrument flying, if they ever lost their instruments in IMC, if that ever happened to them.
Oh, okay. Yep.
And I guess, what would you do if you lost your instruments in IMC? I mean, I know there's always reversionary capabilities, but just curious for your specific situation.
Right. Yeah, I have fortunately not lost any instruments in IMC. I have lost once in flight my instrument pressure pump, which resulted in the attitude indicator failing. But that was on a beautiful, clear, cloudless day. It was interesting to see how the attitude indicator very slowly started to become unreliable. But it was no problem because, like I said, the weather was very good. So no, I've not had this. I've trained for it, of course, during my instrument training and during flight reviews. But that's a little different because the instructor is covering up the bad instrument, and then you use something else like a backup attitude indicator or your turn coordinator. I believe it is much harder to recognize in IMC a slowly deteriorating attitude indicator or anything else that gradually fails and then deal with it. But knock on wood, I've not had to deal with that in flight yet. And it's okay. A situation where I'm envious of the pilots flying much larger airplanes with redundant equipment, where everything is comes in pairs or even three instances, and they do comparisons, and an alert is given to the pilots when something doesn't match. So those cockpits of jets and larger airplanes provide a lot more help to recognize when something fails. Our little airplane,
like in the glass cockpits, is that what you're referring to?
Yeah, especially the glass cockpits of jets that have multiple sensors, multiple attitude and air data sensors, and they do a cross comparison between the left and right side, and anytime there's a mismatch, a warning is given. So it helps recognize when something is failing or isn't quite working reliably anymore.
Because if I'm correct, you actually work for an avionics company, is that correct?
That is correct, yeah, I do. I was a software engineer until about 10 years ago, and then I switched to what we call program management role. But I do work for an avionics company, and I've worked with customers mostly in the air transport area, so big airplanes like the Dreamliner and the A350, and now more recently the C series. And yes, they all have these redundant systems and automatic comparators that raise a flag and alert the pilot when something isn't failing.
Gotcha.
Sorry, when something isn't working.
Gotcha. Well, okay. Can I ask you one more question?
Sure.
What's the toughest instrument flight that you've ever had? What were the conditions?
Toughest instrument flight I've ever had. Well, I don't know that I can pick one single flight and identify it as the toughest. You know, it looks pretty tough, and it is tough in that it requires a lot of focus and concentration when you fly an approach to minimums. You know, when the ceiling really is at 200 feet on the ILS and visibility is a half mile. That is pretty tough. But what I often find even tougher is the go no-go decisions before the flight actually happens. You know, when the weather is marginal, you know it's not going to be easy. You know, deciding do I even make the flight, or do I make the flight an hour later, an hour earlier? You know, sometimes depending on how good the weather information is that you're looking at, how different sources of weather are aligned or not aligned. You know, it can be pretty difficult sometimes to try to make the right call, you know, especially if you have passengers with you that expect that once you go, you know, you get a nice ride to your destination. So you don't want to launch when maybe conditions down the road are not so good. At the same time, you don't want to cancel when there's a very good chance of making the flight. So I, as challenging as the you know, these approaches in particular may seem in low instrument conditions, I find it often tougher to do all the planning and thinking and analysis before the flight even starts. Does that make sense?
Gotcha. Yeah, I got you. Thank you. Well, I guess that's all the questions I have. If you don't have any for me.
No, I don't. Noah, thank you for letting me tie you in here. Have a good rest
Thank you very much.
of your day.
Fly safely.
Good luck for finishing your training.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
You have a good one. Bye-bye.
You too. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Okay, so what I'm going to do next is I am bringing up the YouTube chat window, and I will see if there are any questions there. Chris from Chicago, a discussion on your prep for going into big airports would be interesting. What do you think is hard? What do you focus on? Yeah, the thing is that there's one thing that's hard about going into large airports, and it's taxiing on the ground. It's you know, once if you're in the air, either on takeoff or before landing, it's busier, of course, and you might fly a little faster, but it's no different than a smaller airport with a tower and approach control facility. But on the ground, that's where you need to be prepared. So I pay extra attention before I go there to understand where the FBO location is, or if there are multiple, you know, which ones there are, which one I want, and what the likely taxi routes are, so that there's a sense of familiarity when by the time I get there. And you know, beyond that, it's really not terribly hard, and you know, I would encourage everyone to try that sometime. You work yourself up and you start with a Class C or a few Class C airports, and if you're comfortable there, well, go to something a little bigger, maybe during the not so busy times. Some comments about sound issues and an echo, and I'm not sure I can do anything about that here. Oh, sound is fixed, no more echoes. Good. Hi Martin, I fly a Bonanza also, and I'm curious about your thoughts flying IMC in rain with no onboard radar. I can speak to that because that's what I do. I don't have onboard radar. I do have ADS-B in, so the FISB information, but that of course has a time delay compared with onboard radar, and the thing that I always look for is it a uniform large green area, or maybe a little bit of yellow in there? And I'm not too worried about that. When the rain gets heavier, I look for reports of thunderstorms or lightning in the METARs, in the ground observations that are also uplinked, or you can listen to the AWOS or ASOS from nearby stations and get an idea that way. That typically works pretty well. So if there is rain, light rain or rain in the area, no thunderstorms, no lightning, and no heavy rain, then from my experience the ride is usually quite acceptable. If it's worse than that, well, then I fly around it or land or turn around and go back. Hope that makes sense. Riley says, hello Martin, hello Riley, greetings to Savannah, thanks for watching. Hello from Argentina. Well, greetings back. Do you have any thoughts on accelerated IFR training programs? I've already passed my written, but I don't want my training to drag on for months and months. I'm afraid I have no thoughts. I have no experience with those myself that would allow me to compare those with anything more regular. I do know a couple of pilots that have gone through these accelerated classes and seem to be quite happy with that. And if that is the only way that your schedule allows you to train, I would give it a try. I have not heard of any real showstopper, why that shouldn't be done or cannot be done. Yeah, I wish I could relate to this with more personal experience, but I can. Let's see what else. Have you flown in Europe? Right, it was easy to start flying in the USA. Difference between airspace, ATC communications, etc. Yes, I did learn to fly in Europe. That's where I grew up, and the actual flying, of course, is no different. But I do believe it is easier in many ways to fly in the US. Certainly more affordable. but things like dealing with airspace, with a very congested airspace in Europe is a challenge for VFR in particular. On IFR, there's a lot more restriction on what route you can you can file, and yeah, so my experience is it's been much easier to fly in the US than in Europe, but then it was also fun in Europe. You know, I have fond memories of my time flying there, and it's actually very nice where all you can get to in 2 or 3 hours of flight time, as opposed to 2 or 3 hours from Iowa. Well, I'm still in the Midwest, pretty much no matter which direction I go. 2 or 3 hours in Europe, you can cross the Alps, you can cross 3 or 4 different countries and hear different accents, hear different languages, and that is often a lot of fun. All right, it looks like that is it for questions. I have one final topic for today, and then I'll call it a night, and this is about ways to expedite your arrival to an airport when the weather isn't perfect VFR, but it isn't low IFR either. It's somewhere in the middle. Here's the scenario. We're flying to Chilton County Airport coming from the west, and we've been enjoying a very nice tailwind. Reported weather on the ground is wind from the west at 17 knots, ceiling 1200 overcast. In other words, VFR conditions on the ground with moderate wind. Now, Chilton County has a runway 8/26, pretty well aligned with the wind, but of course we don't want to land with a 17 knot tailwind, so runway 26 is what we're looking for. Now, while the weather is VFR at the field, with a ceiling of 1200 overcast, ATC likely cannot let us descend low enough to reach those VFR conditions, because they are bound by what's called the minimum vectoring altitude, MVA. And while I haven't looked up what the MVA is in this particular area, it's typically at least 1500 feet or more above the ground. So in this scenario, we'd still be in the clouds at the minimum vectoring altitude, and the only way to get lower than that is to fly an instrument approach. And fortunately, runway 26 does have an RNAV approach, and let's assume we have an IFR-approved GPS, so we can use that to fly the approach. Coming from the west here, we'll do the course reversal at the initial approach fix, and then proceed inbound for the runway. And this is what that looks like, right? Fly over to the east side of the field, reverse course, and go back. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with flying the approach this way. However, coming from the west, it is a substantial distance to go past the airport to the initial approach fix, to fly the course reversal in the hold, and then to go back to the runway. It's about 24 miles, which you wouldn't have to fly when landing straight in on runway 8, which we had said because the strong wind is not an option today. So as you may have guessed, there is another option, and I'll show it to you here on the approach plate for the RNAV to runway 8. And you may be wondering, how is the approach to runway 8 going to help me if we want to land on runway 26? And the answer is, we can use the approach to runway 8 to descend to VFR conditions on the west side of the airport, and then circle to land to runway 26 in the traffic pattern without flying the extra 20 or so miles required for the full RNAV approach to runway 26. It saves a bunch of time and gas, so the circling approach can be a really nice tool to save some time on the way to the destination. And here's what that looks like. You can see we're getting nowhere near the initial approach fix for the approach to 26. So saves quite a bit of time, lets us get on the ground more quickly. One word of caution on this. I suggest you only use the circling approach method if from the weather report you can reasonably expect good VFR conditions. There are published circling minimums, and they can allow circling approaches in pretty marginal conditions sometime, but it's not an easy procedure to fly when the weather is bad, especially at night or in the dark. So please use this carefully. Getting to good VFR conditions under the cloud layer can be a good and safe use for this tool. All right, that concludes our episode for September. I hope it was entertaining. Maybe you learned something useful here today. I plan to have another episode sometime in October. There hasn't been an exact date set, but it will be announced on the website, www.martin.aero, when we get a little closer. And you can then again sign up to call in, to connect via Skype, and hopefully win one of those gift cards for Sporty's Pilot Shop. Until then, thank you for joining today, fly safe, and see you next time. Bye-bye.